You ever get that feeling like certain cases just kind of stick with you?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like you hear about them and they just don't let go. The Springfield 3 is definitely one of those for me. It's one of those mysteries that seems impossible, 3 women disappear without a trace, and decades later, we're still no closer to the truth.
It's tough to even think about.
It is. So are you ready to dive back into the details with me and see if maybe we can shed some new light on this?
Absolutely. I think a fresh perspective is always good, especially with a cold case like this.
All right, so for anyone just joining us who maybe hasn't heard of the Springfield 3, let's start with the basics. We're talking about Springfield, Missouri, back in 1992, June 7th, to be exact. It was supposed to be the start of summer vacation, graduations, all that good stuff.
Yeah, time for celebration.
Exactly. But for 3 women, it turned into a nightmare. Suzanne Streeter and her friend Stacy McCall, they were both 18, I think, recent high school graduates. And Susie's mom, Cheryl Levitt, they just vanished. Poof. Gone.
And it's the kind of disappearance that just gets under your skin, They weren't last seen in some seedy part of town or involved in anything risky. They were at a graduation party. It's a pretty normal thing for teenagers to be doing.
Totally. So let's go back to that night. They leave the party. It's 2 in the morning?
Yeah, a little after 2, like 2:15, something like that. They were originally going to crash at a friend's house, but then changed their minds and decided to go back to Susie's mom's place.
Cheryl's house.
Right, Cheryl's house.
Right.
And that's the last anyone ever saw them.
And then the next morning, it's just bam, full-blown mystery, right?
Exactly. You've got their cars parked outside the house, like they just pulled in, lights are on inside. But the women, nowhere to be found.
It's just so strange. And their purses, wallets, everything was left untouched too, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Nothing seemed out of place inside the house.
Except, and this is the part that always gets me, there was a broken globe on the porch light.
Oh, yeah, that's a weird detail.
It is. And it makes you wonder, was there a struggle? Did someone break it trying to get in? Or get out? Or was it just a random thing and totally unrelated?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, we're talking about a case with very few clues, so even the smallest detail could be significant. But there's really no way to know for sure.
And then there's the whole thing with the erased voicemail on the answering machine. In 1992, who even knew how to do that?
Right. That's a good point. It does make you think that whoever erased that message knew what they were doing and maybe had something to hide.
Totally. And it just makes the mystery even deeper. What was on that message? Could it have been the key to solving the whole thing? We'll never know.
That's the frustrating part. Lost evidence.
So are there any other clues from those early days of the investigation that maybe point us in the right direction?
Well, there were a few possible sightings of a green van around the time of the disappearances.
A green van.
Yeah, and some witnesses said they saw a woman who looked distressed inside the van. But eyewitness accounts can be unreliable, especially in high-stress situations. People remember things differently.
Yeah, but wouldn't a woman screaming for help from inside a van be kind of hard to mistake?
You'd think so, but even then, memories can be tricky. Plus, there was no license plate number, no clear description of the people in the van, so trying to track down a random green van is pretty much impossible.
That's true. And then there's the fact that the missing persons report wasn't filed for a whole day after the women disappeared.
Oh, yeah. That was a big issue early on in the investigation.
I mean, that's a lot of time for someone to get away or cover their tracks.
It is. And it does make you wonder if maybe someone close to the women was involved and intentionally delayed the report. Or maybe it was just a tragic miscommunication. We just don't know.
Man, it's just layer after layer of mystery with this case.
It really is, and it doesn't stop there. Fast forward to 1997. 5 years after the women disappeared, a tip comes in about the parking garage at Cox Hospital.
Oh, yeah. I remember reading about that. I bet there was a lot of hope riding on that tip.
There was. I mean, any lead after all that time must have felt like a huge breakthrough. But even after an extensive search, they found absolutely nothing.
What a letdown that must have been for everyone involved, especially the families.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. You get your hopes up, and then to have them dashed like that, it's got to be devastating.
And then there's the whole Robert Craig Cox angle. He was a convicted criminal, right?
He was, yeah. Convicted of several crimes, actually.
And he claimed to know something about the women, didn't he?
He did. He said he knew what happened to them, even hinted at where their bodies might be buried.
So, was he telling the truth?
Well, that's the thing. His stories were all over the place, never consistent, and there was never any real evidence to back up his claims.
So maybe he was just a guy trying to get attention or leverage a better deal for himself.
Could be. It's hard to say what his motivations were, but without evidence, his words don't really mean much.
It's just another dead end in a case that's full of them.
Pretty much, yeah.
No wonder this case is still generating so many theories. From abduction by someone they knew to possible involvement with organized crime. I mean, when you have this many unanswered questions, it's natural for people to try and fill in the blanks.
That's human nature, for sure. And we also have to think about the impact this case has had on the community in Springfield. This isn't just some cold case file. It's a wound that hasn't healed.
That's a good point. It's easy to get caught up in the details and forget about the real people who are still living with this every day.
Exactly. The families of the women, the community as a whole, they're still searching for answers. They hold vigils every year, hoping for some kind of closure.
It's a good reminder that for some people, the mystery never really ends.
No, it doesn't.
So, having looked at all this again,
Right.
where do you stand now? What do you think is the most likely scenario?
It's really hard to say. Every theory has its own set of problems, things that don't quite add up.
But do you have any gut feelings? Anything that just seems more plausible than the others?
Honestly, not really. It's one of those cases where it feels like there's more going on than we know. Like someone out there has the missing pieces, but they haven't come forward yet.
Man, I hope whoever that is, if they're out there, I hope they find the courage to speak up someday. Even if it's just a small detail, it could make all the difference.
You never know. It could be the thing that cracks the case wide open.
Well, if anyone listening out there has been following this case like we have, I encourage you to do some digging of your own. Read those old reports, explore the theories, and see what you think. It's a fascinating case, albeit a tragic one. And maybe, just maybe, someone out there has the key to solving it.
It's worth a shot, right?
Always.